So welcome to our sex shaman interview. I have two glorious co-authors with me here, and this is actually the first in a series of interviews we're doing for the Wisdom Circle, which is a book club for the Sex Shamans book. So if you don't already know, if you haven't already voraciously read it, as Laurie says that she has, this is a compilation of 20 co-authors who are sharing their journeys of sacred sexual awakening. And so I have with me Matooka, who authored The Kinky Queer Witch in Love. And I also have Laurie Handlers, whose Tales of a Juicy Crone was her autobiographical contribution. So these two amazing love leaders are here to spontaneously just have a conversation, and I thought the three of us could weave on the topics of that which arose in your personal narratives. Laurie Handler's bringing up a juicy crone, and both of you being crones, and I happen to be on the cusp coming out of motherhood into my cronehood. I have a lot to learn from both of you in that journey. And so maybe we should start there, and then we'll see where it takes us. So I just want to start by asking a little bit about the, that rite of passage, the change of life, and of course, I don't need to hear about the hot flashes or the chemicals or the hormones, but I want to hear what it's like at the level of the wisdom download, the initiation into being a wise woman. So at the subtle energies, what is that shift like for you?
I can speak. The download that I got was later on, after I was way into the flashes and everything. Menopause lasted for me about 10 years, so I had a good long time to focus on it and to resist it. And what I got was, and I wish I could remember the author of the book and the book that I read. Someone sent me a book called Women's Wisdom or Wise Woman or something. And I don't know what book it is, but thank you to that author, anonymous. It said, stop resisting the hot flashes, stop resisting everything. Don't resist. And that was a big chunk of wisdom. I just stopped resisting everything. I stopped resisting, and resistance costs so much life force. So I would just pass on to people who haven't gone through that change yet, or who are in the midst of it. Stop resisting. Like, there's something amazing to the other side, and resistance kept me from seeing it. It was just like everything just occurred as just a pain in the ass. And I just and then when I stopped resisting, everything became so joyous. So that's what I'll say there.
What I love about that wisdom is that it's not just about menopause. It's like you were initiated into surrender, which is an immense life skill. To, now on the other side, it's like life brings you, the universe presents you with something, some obstacle, some challenge. And it's like, instead of resisting it, it's like, how do I just roll with it? For you, Matooka?
For me, coming into welcoming inner stillness, having mother in motherhood and in earlier years, I found myself juggling the world, and allowing all the outer realms to pull me here and there. And coming into cronehood had me dropping into more stillness and self-reflection and listening more deeply to the soul wisdom rather than assimilating outer world more. That took time as well, because I stopped my cycling very young. I was 45. But the stillness, it took 10 years also for me to come into the place of grounding it into inviting crone, like welcoming it, So that was the process.
Yeah, it is so fascinating how it takes us at different times, and then it lasts a different amount of time. Like I'm 45 right now, and I'm, you know, really in this washer machine. But I love this invitation into, you know, beyond the symptoms, you know, the maturity, the deepening, the wisening, and the stillness. It's gorgeous.
Truly, I just want to share that the stopping the cycle is just the invitation to enter.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it is a journey.
And I'm curious, in that journey, what would you say is possible for you, you know, on the other side? Because what a rite of passage is. So we're, you know, we happen to be talking about the passage from, you know, the motherhood phase into the maiden, whether you're mother or not. It's just that, you know, connecting the womb now towards the latter stages of life instead of new life, towards the veil and the mysteries beyond life. But that particular rite of passage is one rite of passage of many that we go through in life. And what constitutes a rite of passage is a threshold that you pass through from which you can't go back. It's actually something where you can't see it where you stand now. Like I can't see it where I am now, having, you know, just being at the doorway. And yet when you go through it, life is never the same. And so I'm curious how you would quantify, like, what do you have access to now that you didn't before?
Oh my God. Patience. I have access to patience. Like I still have impatience, but I have access to much more patience. I have access to a whole realm of feelings that I didn't. Yeah, I have access to sharing, being collaborative. I don't know, I feel like I'm very different than I was before.
I've heard you in the past describe, Laurie, how as an elder, you don't give a shit. It's like you give the fucking...
That too. When I turned 50, I decided it didn't matter anymore what people thought of me, and I wasn't going to spend any more time worrying about what people think of me. Like, that takes also too much energy. Like, if they think I'm hot, I'm hot. If they think I'm sexy, I'm sexy. If they're not attracted to me, they're not attracted to me. Like, I don't care. You're right. I don't give a shit. Like, I speak my mind. I speak my truth for the most part. And I don't worry about, oh my God, what are they going to think of me if I say this? Like that took up a lot of a big part of my growing girldom into womanhood.
Yeah, it's so liberating. I love the sounds of that.
I want to say I totally relate to everything that Laurie was saying. I think you come into a place of not just patience, but your capacity to hold space for situations, especially for yourself, and communication really deepens. Mm-hmm. Awareness and presence can really, really deepen because we're not holding the energy that takes up so much space as we once did on the concerns that happen with what people think or what people's demands are.
Yeah, and you know, my experience of you, Matooka, especially right now, is that you're sharing. Most of us are in a sort of, these are uncertain times, we're living in the mystery, but you tend to be like the embodiment of that you're really in this place of not knowing as a beautiful state of grace. And I'm curious if you could share a little bit more about the practice of the unknown.
Wow. The practice of the unknown. I do a lot of Ladihan by myself. Yeah, I thought you'd like that, Laurie.
I do.
Yeah, I put on a headset with music they were doing the roof here as an example. I put a headset on, I put music on, I blindfolded myself and I blissed out for a while. I especially do things like that when I feel a little bit out of touch with myself because so much is happening around me that's moving the energy, and I'm an empath, so I tend to get pulled or take it in. And I have to come into a state of presence and dream into that unknown with Do I have attachments about anything? Where would I like this energy to go? Does it matter? There's that too. That doesn't matter. So my practice is breath, sound, breath, and movement.
Yeah, and the book actually has a lot of practices in it. It has, one per chapter, and Laurie's chapter has, the how-to, the intricate description of how to do Lottie Han. And Laurie, do you want to tell us a little bit more of Lottie Han? So our viewers can get the, directions on how to do this here, but
Sure.
But a little bit about how it's been alive for you.
Well, first, I just want to say, Matooka, how excited I am that you brought it up and that you're doing it. Like that, I mean, nothing could feel better than giving someone a transmission and they use it and they do it and it's part of their life. Lottie Han is the practice of, it is a surrender practice, and yet it's a chaotic meditation. It's moving in the unknown, and the way Tantra people do it, the way I learned to do it, was putting on music and then a long period of music, a long time, a long piece of music, and then just letting inner guidance move us, or the impulse to move us. So it's not like doing yoga or doing a prescribed dance step. It's anything but. It's more like contact improv, way slowed down, like contact improv played to a very slow speed. And you move, not knowing exactly what part of your body is going to move you to move, and then you move, and then you wait for the next impulse to move, and then that moves you. And Lottie Han literally translated means spiritual practice. It means like being moved by the divine. And you can expand that. I've expanded that to mean making love in the unknown, instead of being in a rut, like we always do the same thing. No, we don't do the same thing. We Lottie Han in lovemaking, and then that expands to making love to life, which then hits on Crystal Dawn's chapter. But it's like whatever life, and right now life has thrown us all a big piece of unknown called COVID. Mm-hmm. And this is a good time to Lottie Han, where everyone is Lottie Haning, whether they're consciously doing it or not.
Yeah, the world is in an unprecedented amount of uncertainty. And
exactly.
I know that too, like a lot of our seekers and students are in this fork in the road. It's like the will might want to do things the way we've always done them. It's like we want to go back to normal because that's what the creature of habit does. And yet the universe is asking us to reinvent, to be sensitive, to modify, to pivot. And so, a lot of us are in this deep inquiry of like, okay, what's next? And a lot of the effort that we put towards trying to make things normal again, it can be like trying to swim upstream, right? So how do we make ourselves more sensitive to the guidance, to the subtle,
So for me, I drop away from the mind and more into the feel, and then allowed the transmission of action mm-hmm. to move from there, if that makes sense.
Beautiful. Yeah, I appreciate the quieting ourselves so that we can listen to something bigger. Yeah.
That's essential, actually.
Okay. You want to add to that, Laurie?
Well, I don't have something like that. Mine's really different because when I sit and meditate, I fall asleep. I'm just that kind of person. Also, if I listen to guided meditation, I fall asleep, like I'm snoring and somebody has to wake me up. So my mornings are, when I wake up, I work out for 30, 40 minutes, like I lift weights, and then I swim. And swimming for me is an act of meditation. So I just swim. I swim for 15, 20, 30 minutes. And that totally clears everything. The act of being in water, and also the act of just not having to think. I can just swim. And so that clears my mind. And then I take on the day. Messages just come all the time. I also Laurie Handlers. I don't know. I just listen. Like if something comes, I just don't resist it. It's like that surrender piece that I got during menopause. If I get this hit, like I have to call this person, or I need to get in touch with this person. Like this morning, I had this whole period of grief. I heard that a friend of mine has leukemia, and I know what that is in children, but I don't know what it is in an adult in their 70s, and I have to like look it up. And I heard all this stuff, and I just went through this huge grief period of missing people, and so that just informed me that there's this chunk of people that I need to be in touch with. You know, that just said to me, okay, you're grieving, let go of the grief and joyously get in touch with this bunch of people who I haven't been in touch with lately, and who knows what's going on with them.
It's so beautiful because you bring us to the value of feeling our feelings. You know, it's one of the common values that's shared by all of the shamans in the book. It's like we are welcoming the emotional body as part of our guidance system, but more so it's the fuel that gives us the power to do the magic that we do. And that's a radical notion in the face of a emotion negative culture. And we have a culture that's fucking afraid of feeling, right? So the feelings come up and it's like, hush, hush, they're there, quiet down, like be appropriate. And so instead we have this wild band of tantrikas that's saying, feel your feelings, like wake up like Laurie and cry all morning. And then you're like clearing. And so it is beautiful to, you know, the water, working with the elements. One of the things that shamans do is work with elements. And so for you to actually be, you know, really connected in the water, it is an emotional movement. But all of our practices that we described are like, hey, we have to clear the mind, because there's a huge difference between feeling your feelings and thinking you're feeling your feelings, right? Like that's not actually where it happens. It's in the emotional body. So I am curious to hear more about your relationship to your emotions. You know, maybe Matooka, you can share a little bit about, you know, what is your current practice in terms of running your emotions, or feel, you know, what does that look like to feel your feelings?
Thank you for asking. It has different spectrums depending on what's showing up. Like if sometimes my emotions will show up as a little bit of anxiety, you know, and my first go-to isn't necessarily to do emotional release. It might be to feel, just come into my body and say, hey, I'm here, you know, and yeah, you have something to tell me, I can tell, because you're really grabbing my attention, you know, and I'll just breathe and hum and rock sometimes, or do some sound, breath, and movement. I might even Laurie Handlers. And then if I get access to a gush, something like maybe anger or despair or something, I might go into it with some emotional release. I do a lot of hand screams too. I'm a big hand screamer. So yeah, it depends on how that emotion shows up at first. Like if I wake up agitated, I'm going into anger. I'm just going to go into anger, you know. But when it shows up in those ways that you don't know where it's coming from, and it's anxiety, or like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Yeah, I quell, I soothe.
Yeah, self-soothing is really important. But I love how you're looking at the wisdom underneath. Like, what is it trying to tell me, as opposed to, oh, this is destructive, or this is, you know, I hate this part about myself, instead of it's embracing it and listening.
Yeah, essential for loving yourself is the only way to move it.
Beautiful. Sweet. Anything else about emotions, Laurie?
I practice emotional release regularly. I mean, like this morning, how I got into it was I was doing yoga. I decided not, I knew I was feeling something and I decided I couldn't lift weights. So I just was doing yoga instead. And when I got to I was doing like the triangle pose. And then the next thing was I was on the ground. And that just brought me into bioenergetic emotional release. And this huge wave of grief came. That's how my day is. If I wake up and I feel something, I just hit the floor. Mm-hmm. Like I know already. I don't want to, I couldn't come on with you two until I moved all that. Right. And that just took a while, and then I got in the water. So, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona, so it's very hot here, but I have an equal relationship to water as I do to fire. So I also have a big fire pit, and it would be nothing to also strike a match and light a fire and spend time at the fire. But right now the pool is the only option. It's way too hot in Phoenix to light a fire right now. It's in the hundreds. So
what I love about your share, especially from yoga or bioenergetic movement, is how deeply linked emotions are to the body, to the somatic. Mm-hmm. And this is such a big doorway, or in order to get into the feelings, we have to get into the body. That's how we know we're not just thinking about our feelings. Is okay, what are the sensations? What is the body? There's a body wisdom. It wants to work its way out. And whether that's through, yoga poses, or through shaking, or through just spontaneous sobbing, that there's a wringing out that the body has to do to move through the motions, so that we're not just stuck in looping the emotions in the mind. And then I also want to point out, which I'm sure you both can relate, there's healthy emotions and there are unhealthy, destructive emotions. And so it's not to say, when I say, society is judging the emotions, it's basically because they don't know the discernment, because it's I'm afraid of all emotions being unhealthy. But the truth is there are, degrees of depression and anxiety and shame that are unhealthy. There's unhealthy, toxic levels of guilt and fear, and, that run us. And so I make that distinction because I have been through, massive episodes of depression myself. That's just one of the karmic journeys that I've had to go through at various points in my life. And yeah, I'm curious about that. Obviously, some people tend towards depression, others towards anxiety, like a fear, and some people, even go towards mania, and the mania can be destructive. But I'm curious if either of you want to share about unhealthy emotional patterns.
Well, I in my life, I was run by anger for years and years and years until I learned the technique of bioenergetic emotional release. And then I went into it for 6 months every single day to dig up and out the amount of anger that I had, which was unexplainable. I mean, therapy didn't help. Nothing helped until I just took it on. I faced it head on. So I think emotions inform us of things like fight or flight or freeze. And I think they're only unhealthy when they don't have a place to be fully expressed. There's not a place to unleash them that doesn't have to do with self-destruction or destructing another. Yeah, I think that learning a practice or a number of practices, like all of us, the three of us know them, learning the practices and then moving, emotion is energy in motion. So we just need to move them out of being stored and trapped in the body, and stored or trapped in the thoughts we have about them in our mind, and move them out. And maybe some of that requires doing that in the presence of a skilled human being, a skilled professional who knows how to help someone move them.
Yeah, it is true that even for myself, a skilled professional, sometimes the emotions are so big and bigger than my capacity, where I was like, hey, I need the mirror and the reflection of a practitioner or a friend, or, this is bigger than me. I can't claim to try to like go up on a mountain and meditate or handle it my own. It's like, we're tribal beings. I either need a community to witness and help me move it, or I need, a deep confidant who can actually reflect back to me, my own wisdom or my own center. So I do want to say that, because emotions can cause a loneliness, like, I don't want other people to know, but then the more we hide it, the more it pathologizes. And the more we come out with it, the more we realize my insides are not that different from your insides. We as community can help each other, kind of release the guilt, shame, fear, so that we can be current emotionally.
And release the depression, or the anger, or whatever it is. But yeah, that's what we definitely need each other. There's no question about that.
Do you have a pattern, Matooka, where mine's depression or grief, Laurie's is anger, and you mentioned some anxiety. Is that more of a fear inclination?
Yeah, tendency towards what if, because I'm always tracking. I come from a background that in my childhood that was abusive, and so I'm always tracking the behavior or energy field of what's going on around me, and that is fear-based survival. But the pattern is so strong, and I want to say that I probably even inherited a degree of predisposition. But once you own, hey, this is my nervous system, this is this is how that is, then you can work with love, a more loving paradigm, create a loving relationship with the self, in that instead of being, as you were saying earlier, annoyed that that's there, or just go away, I don't want to know you, like, get out of here, you're having behavior again. I used to feel very unacceptable in my younger years, because these emotions would happen suddenly and they would rule, they just consumed.
I just really, I'm touched actually that the three of us represent, these different kind of poles, and it points out that people might have different tendencies, and you brought up, Matooka, that we inherited. Sometimes it's not even ours, sometimes it's our ancestors, and we have an opportunity as modern shamans to say, hey, this lineage can stop here with me. Like, I can break through this by feeling not just all my feelings, but feeling the grief of my ancestors, and putting that to rest, so that they can then live through my DNA, re-experiencing life here and now, and experience the joy and the gratitude and the preciousness that life has to offer on the other side of whatever emotions have been holding us back. But I do get that we're all embodiments of individuals who've had, it's like, okay, this is our karmic pattern. We've worked through this. Now we have practices and we're living with it. We're not claiming that you clear that, you heal that, and you never have to. It's like, oh, now how do you actually have a good relationship with it and not be run by it? And so that's exciting. And it's especially important when the hormones get really strong and they can hijack us. As I'm saying, I'm going through this like massive hormonal change, and you just never want to underestimate the power of hormones. and you also don't want to give it too much credit and be like, oh, I'm going to listen to my emotions so much that I indulge and all of a sudden I'm hysterical. It's like, no, hormones is one of the dimensions. There's also those higher states of awareness and peace and contentment. Contentment itself is an emotion, and it's an underrated emotion in the Western culture. We have Eastern cultures that really value it, but we need to cultivate and remind ourselves of how important contentment is as a practice. So I'm curious.
I'd like to say something about hormones for a minute, because as sex shamans, which we've determined that we all are, that's what's so important about having sex and running sexual energy. There are hormones released in the body. I'm just going to say, like, hormones cannot be underestimated sex releases 4 groups of hormones. Oh, and oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, and endorphins. And we need those. We need those to feel. We need those to feel good. Our brain needs those. Our blood needs that. Like our whole nervous system needs those hormones. And that's part of why sex feels so good, whether it's solo sex or sex with another or sex with others. Like the rush and the arousal and all that is dumping hormones into our system, and we need that. Human beings need that.
Yeah, that cascade of it's like this elixir of life that comes through.
Yeah.
And it can be accessed through not just physical sex, but running energy in nature, like just being alive as a sensual being, with the wind on your skin and while you hug a tree. And as Laurie mentioned, like when you dive into water, I mean, that's a very sensual experience, but all the sensual experiences too can induce those chemicals, but there's nothing like orgasm. Like orgasm.
I always say that, I love running, but I prefer sex. Releases those things in my body too, but if I have my choice about how I want to release them, I'm going to choose sex.
Nice. Yeah. And so, when we say we're sex shamans, it has to do with using this state altering ecstasy towards healing or divination, or really as an alchemical magic to recreate our reality. It's a big part of what we're talking about. Emotions happens to be one of the fuels of it. The sexual chemistry is like the medicine, instead of the plant medicine. In this case, it's like using this orgasmic and ecstatic energy. And what are we using it towards? We're using it towards creating a reality, creating a path that really serves love, that goes beyond our individual will, beyond our, just the fulfillment of whatever our wanting is, but really connecting us with the greater purpose of why we're here. So I'm curious, as we wrap up, and those are my closing notes, if you have any like a closing message around, as a co-author of Sex Shamans, is there something, an aftertaste you want to leave our viewers with?
Don't stop your life force at any age. Like if you have some idea or opinion about how old you are and how that means something, stop it. It doesn't mean anything. Don't act your age. That's my aftertaste.
Yeah, I think that I love that, Laurie. That's beautiful. I love it. Like, yeah, I'm totally down with that, actually. I bring that up because I just I went through a healing process, a shadow work around my grandmother, and I decided I was going to be a colorful crone, not the person that she was. So thank you for that. Yeah, so my aftertaste is that you're the power. Like anybody is the power they're seeking. Anybody. Like we are what we're looking for.
Mm.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, goddesses, for co-creating this little wisdom circle. I look forward to more.
I actually have if they go to my website, lauriehandlers.com, they can go to lauriehandlers.com/unknown, and they will get the gift of Ladihan instruction.
Beautiful. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you would like to connect with me, matookamoonbear.com, and I will be there for you to answer questions, chat, explore.
Gorgeous. So if you are resonating with this conversation or these women, these powerful wisdom keepers, then please stay in touch. We look forward to connecting with you. Blessings.
KamalaDevi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.